Hello and welcome to this video about normalization. So let's just get into it. We have different forms of normalization or levels of normalization. And today we are going to go through the first, second, and third normal form of normalization. And the table that I am going to be using is the My Movies table, or a version of it, so that we can try and normalize it. In order for a table to be at the first normal form, it cannot contain any non-atomic values. We call it a non-atomic value when we have a cell that contains more than one value. Here I have normalized my table to the first normal form, so each cell now contains only one value. Only trouble now is that we have some cells that contain the exact same information, and that's not necessary. This is also called redundant information. So the question here is, can we do something about this? But why, you might ask, do we wish to get rid of redundant information? Redundant information increases the possibility of errors in our table. Say that we want to change the value of a cell in our table. If you have a lot of cells containing the exact same information in a table, then you would have to change every single cell in order for it not to be wrong. And that's just not convenient. Let's talk about the second normal form. A table is on the second normal form when all of the values in the table has a full functional dependency on the primary key in that table. And full functional dependency means basically just that a cell's value is not partially dependent on any other values than the primary key. Okay, so what we see here is that title and movie ID and role name would be our primary key here. And they are, let's see, they determine duration minute and release year, so they are dependent on the title and movie ID. But when we get to the actor ID, or actor first name, last name, all that has to do with the actor, they're only partially dependent on the primary key because an actor can be in a different film as well, can be in two different movies. So they're only partially dependent on the primary keys in our table. Let's see, the primary key would determine the format of our movie, and it will also determine location of the movie, where it is. So both format and location are dependent on the primary key. Next up we have country, and we'll just say for now that country is determined by the primary key in our table. Same with let's see, genre. Genre is also dependent on the primary key. Director, name, everything that has to do with the director is only partially dependent on the primary key. And so the production company, for now, we say that that is also dependent on the primary key. Okay, so this is what our movie database would look like on the second normal form. So I put movie ID, title, duration, min, release year, format, location, country, genre, and production company in one table. I made an actor and movie table to connect actor to through actor and movie to movie, because an actor can have several movies and a movie can have several actors, naturally. Same with movie director. A director can have several movies and a movie can have several directors, which is why I've created a connecting entity between movie and director. And so we make it to the third normal form. In order for a table to be at the third normal form, there can be no transitive dependencies. And when a value has a transitive dependency, it basically just means that a value is dependent on some other value than the primary key in the table. Okay, so we know that movie ID determines the title, the duration minutes, release year, format, and location of our movie. But now that I added country ID, genre ID, and production company ID, we can see that country ID is part of making country transitively dependent on movie ID and country ID. Same goes for genre and production company. They're transitively dependent on movie ID as well as their production company ID or genre ID. As you can see in our actor entity, actor ID determines the first name, last name, birth year, and gender of our actor. So they all have a full functional dependency on actor ID. And then we have our actor in movie entity, which is the connecting entity between movie and actor. This could actually, in this case, actor in movie is the whole entity in itself, is a super key. Because you could take away role name and it would still be a primary key. It would be a candidate key. At the same time, though, that would only be if the actor only has one role in the movie. Next, we have our director entity, where director entity is the determinant for first name, last name, birth year, and gender of our directors. And movie director is our connecting entity, and movie ID and director ID put together are actually a candidate key. We can't take away director ID and still have a unique identifying factor here, because there could be several directors on one movie. And then without director ID as a part of the primary key, then movie ID wouldn't be very helpful, would it? Because we would have had maybe 3 M001. And if we do have 3 of M001, it wouldn't be a primary key anymore because it wouldn't be unique. And here you can see our tables or our database on the third normal form. We have our movie entity here, where duration, min, release year, format ID, and location ID, they are dependent on the primary key. Also the title are dependent on the primary key. We have our film format entity, where format is dependent on format ID. We have our location entity, where location is dependent on location ID. And of course, these are leading back to format ID and location ID in the movie entity. We have our genre entity, where genre ID decides or determines genre, and that points to the movie genre entity, which points back to movie ID in the movie entity. And we have our movie country entity and our country entity. Country ID is dependent on country, or country is dependent on country ID. And then we have our movie country entity, where movie ID and country ID are dependent on each other. They're the primary key put together. They're actually a candidate key because you can't take away one without the other not being a proper primary key anymore, because they won't have that unique quality anymore. So that was movie country and country. Next up, movie production and production company. Movie production is a connecting entity between a production company and movie, because as we know, a movie can have several production companies and a production company can have several movies. And finally, our actor and movie director, and director entities we've already talked about. So that's basically it. That was the first, second, and third normal form. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.